directing the movers. Arthur, tell them not to touch the Scylla piece. It's in a delicate state of transition. Martha Holloway bustled in, wiping her hands on an apron. Oh, Serafina, how lovely. We can have tea every morning. And you can help me with the baby shower planning. Serafina looked at Martha as if she had suggested they both go live in a dumpster. I am here to work, Martha. Art is a lonely mistress. I require absolute silence. No vacuuming, no shouting about sausages, and certainly no whale music. Barnaby leaned over to Arthur. Is she always like this when she's creating? Or is this a special performance for us? Arthur just took a deep breath. Chapter 3. The Zenith Conspiracy. While Serafina was turning the sunroom into a fortress of grey mud, a different kind of storm was brewing in the kitchen. Womassanyo, Eleanor, the eldest Holloway daughter, and the family's unofficial mediator, was whispering with Dexter. I saw her notebook, Eleanor whispered, looking over her shoulder toward Penelope. She didn't write Barnaby Jr. or even Arthur. She circled a name. Dexter's eyes widened. What was it? Not something like Apple or Pilot Inspector? Worse, Eleanor said. Zenith. She wants to name the boy Zenith Holloway. Zenith? Dexter choked. That's a brand of television from the 80s. Barnaby will have a stroke. He's already picked out the embroidery for the baby's first butcher's apron. It says Barnaby 3. We have to stop her, Eleanor said. But we have to be subtle. If we tell Barnaby directly, the house will explode. We need to convince her that Zenith is a terrible idea. The problem was that Penelope was in her third trimester, a period during which subtlety was often met with spontaneous weeping or unbridled rage. Later that evening, the family gathered for dinner. Serafina sat at the head of the table, looking exhausted. I have found my theme, she declared, ignoring the plate of shepherd's pie in front of her. It is a commentary on the duality of the human spirit. I am calling it The Serpent and the Siren. Sounds like a pub name, Barnaby muttered. It is a masterpiece. Barnaby, I have captured the essence of conflict. Well, it's not the Holloway side, but I'm working on it. Speaking of sides, Eleanor said, trying to pivot to the baby name, Penelope. I was reading this article about how names ending in the can lead to speech impediments. You know, like Zenith. Penelope froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. Zenith? Who said anything about Zenith? Barnaby looked up, his eyes narrowing. Zenith? Like the TV? Who's naming what Zenith? It's just a name I liked. Penelope snapped. It means the highest point, the peak of excellence. It means my grandson is going to be teased at school by boys named Dave and John. Barnaby shouted. You can't name a Holloway after an electronic appliance. My next grandchild will be called Toaster? At least a toaster is useful, Penelope cried, standing up. You all want to name him after a meat cleaver. I'm going to Serafina's studio. At least the clay doesn't talk back. Chapter 4. The Urn of Montgomery Thorne. Into this simmering cauldron of family resentment stepped Montgomery Monty Thorne, the cousin from the city. Monty was a man who dressed exclusively in linen and spoke in a theatrical baritone. He arrived at the doorstep carrying a heavy, ornate ceramic urn and looking like he had just walked out of a Victorian funeral. Family, Monty intoned, stepping into the hallway. I have returned, and I am not alone. Barnaby looked at the urn. Did you bring a date, Monty? She looks a bit dusty. This, Monty said, clutching the urn to his chest, is great-aunt Gertrude. Her final wish was to be scattered across the ancestral gardens of Oakhaven. I have traveled across 3 counties to fulfill her mandate. Martha gasped. Aunt Gertrude. I haven't seen her in 20 years. Well, I suppose I haven't seen her in this format. Ever. She's staying in the guest room, Monty announced. And I require a period of mourning. And perhaps some of those sausages Barnaby makes. However, Monty was also hiding something. His long-term partner, a man named Sterling, no relation to Serafina, had recently broken up with him. Monty was using the Aunt Gertrude mission as a cover for his emotional breakdown. He found Serafina in the sunroom, hacking away at a giant block of marble that she had switched to because the clay was too compliant. Serafina, Monty sighed. The world is a cruel place. Love is but a fleeting shadow cast upon the wall of eternity. Wanti saita tubiake. Wanti saita. Wanti saita tuvi. Wanti saita. Wanti saita that. Wanti saita that. Wanti saita that. Don't get tears on the marble, Monty. It affects the porosity. Why is that urn here? Don't get tears on na. Gertrude liked art. She once told me that a well-sculpted man was better than a living one, because the sculpture doesn't leave you for a yoga instructor named Klaus. Sounds like a wise woman. Leave her in the corner. She can watch me work. She's probably the most appreciative audience I've had in this house. Meanwhile, Fiona, a local woman who had a history with Monty that was best described as explosive, had heard he was back in town. Fiona was a firebrand who believed that the best way to resolve a conflict was through a loud public confrontation. She arrived at the back door just as Barnaby was trying to sneak a peek at Serafina's statue. "Where is he?" Fiona demanded, pushing past Martha. "Where is that linen-wearing coward? He owes me an apology for the 2018 New Year's Eve incident." "He's mourning, Fiona," Martha cried. "He's got Aunt Gertrude in the sunroom." "I don't care if he's got the Queen of Sheba in there." Monty Thorne, come out and face the music. Chapter 5. The Vacuum of Destiny. The final day of Serafina's Oakhaven residency arrived. She was to unveil her masterpiece, The Serpent and the Siren, to the family before the local art critic arrived. The house was in a state of high tension. Barnaby was still fuming about the name Zenith. Penelope was refusing to speak to anyone who didn't refer to the baby as the little prince. Monty was weeping over Aunt Gertrude's urn, and Fiona was pacing the hallway like a caged tiger. "Everyone," Serafina commanded, standing by the sunroom doors. "The moment has arrived. Behold, the culmination of my struggle." She threw open the doors. In the center of the room stood a statue that was unique. It consisted of two intertwined figures. Why? One looked suspiciously like Barnaby holding a sausage, and the other looked like a woman screaming into a void. It was titled The Scylla and Charybdis of Domesticity. Barnaby squinted. "Is that me? Why am I holding a bratwurst?" "It represents the primal urge for sustenance, Barnaby. It's deep." Suddenly, Monty, distracted by Fiona's shouting from the hallway, tripped. He was carrying a tray of tea. As he fell, he knocked over Aunt Gertrude's urn. The ceramic shattered. A cloud of grey, fine ash billowed into the air, covering Serafina's pristine white statue in a layer of ancestral dust. "Gertrude!" Monty shrieked. "She's everywhere. She's on the Scylla. She's in my tea." At that exact moment, Dexter, who had been tasked by Martha to clean the house before the critic arrived, came around the corner with the new, high-powered Cyclone 3000 vacuum cleaner. "Don't worry, Monty. I've got this," Dexter shouted over the roar of the machine. "No, Dexter, wait," Eleanor screamed, but it was too late. Dexter, in a fit of helpfulness, began vacuuming the floor. The Cyclone 3000 was a beast. Within seconds, it had inhaled 30% of Great Aunt Gertrude. "Stop," Monty wailed, throwing himself onto the vacuum. "You're kidnapping the family matriarch." The vacuum let out a strange, grinding noise. It didn't like vacuuming human remains and pottery shards. With a loud pop, the bag burst. Aunt Gertrude was no longer just on the statue or in the tea. She was now a fine mist that settled over the entire sunroom. The Holloway family and the sterling masterpiece. Serafina looked at her grey-coated statue. She looked at Barnaby, who was sneezing. She looked at Monty, who was cradling the vacuum hose like a fallen comrade. The door opened. It was the art critic, a stern man named Mr. Pringle. He stepped into the room, adjusted his glasses, and looked at the ash-covered